or model. The mean shows that the organizational culture is practiced in Fana Broadcasting Corporate at moderate level. So when we see the correlation analysis, the four independent variables, involvement, consistency, adaptability, and mission, has significant and positively correlated with the employee's performance based using the Pearson correlation coefficients. And here is the regression analysis. The model summary shows that the R-square value is 0.723. This means that organizational culture is responsible for 72.3% of the employees' performance in Fana Broadcasting Corporate. The result of the ANOVA also showed that the model is significant, good, and fits the data. Regarding on the regression coefficients or the beta value or the coefficient of involvement is 0.222, which means that if there is one unit change in the value of involvement, then the employee's performance will be increased by 0.222, or if there is 1% change in the value of involvement, the employee's performance will increase by 22.2%, maintaining other factors constant. The beta value of the consistency is 0.009. This means that if there is one unit of change in the value of consistency, then the employee's performance will be increased by 0.009. The beta value of adaptability is negative 0.049. This also implies that if there is one unit of change in the value of adaptability, then the employee's performance will be decreased by 0.0049. The beta value of mission is 0.299. This also implies that if there is 1% change in the value of mission, then the employee performance will be increased by 29.9%. Regarding on the hypothesis testing, based on the result of the regression, involvement has significant relationship and effect on employees' performance. Here, the result shows that the level of significance is 0.021. Since this is less than 5% or 0.05, then the hypothesis is accepted. The second hypothesis, consistency has significant relationship and effect on employees' performance. As you see, the level of significance, the result shows that the level of significance is 0.753. So this is greater than 0.05. Therefore, it has no significant effect or relationship. Therefore, the hypothesis is rejected. The third hypothesis is that the adaptability has significant relationship and effect on employees' performance. So the level of significance is 0.160. Since the p-value here is greater than 0.05, therefore the hypothesis is rejected. Concerning the mission has significant relationship and effect on employees' performance. So the level of significance is 0.00, therefore this is less than 0.05, and the last hypothesis is accepted. Now let's come to the recommendation part of this presentation. As I said earlier, the organizational culture is practiced moderately, hence the organization should do or undertake frequent cultural audit and review its organizational its environment or working environment. The second recommendation is that Organizational culture in Fana Broadcasting Corporate is responsible only around for 72% of the employees' performance. Therefore, the rest 28% of the employees' performance are contributed by other factors. Therefore, the organization should consider other factors other than the organizational culture. And the third recommendation is that for future researchers, there are different organizational models. Therefore, the future researchers should do their researches on different organizational models on the same organization, as well as on different organizations using large sample sizes in order to broaden our empirical understanding of the subject area. And the last recommendation is, as I said earlier, the effects or the impact of organizational, the impact of adaptability as an element of organizational culture has negative impact on employees' performance, but other researchers show that it has direct positive impact. Therefore, it needs further investigation. Therefore, future researchers are encouraged to clarify this idea. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elias, for that wonderful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, please write those questions down, because I will get back to you to share those questions to our presenter. For Elias Antana, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. Now, the second presenter is Iman Idris from St. Mary's University, and Iman will deliver her research titled An Assessment of Service Quality Gap, the Case of RIDE. Iman Idris. Yeah, please unmute your mic. Can you hear me? We can hear you. Now please share your screen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Iman Idrisima. I'm a marketing management student from St. Mary's University. My title is with assessing the service quality gap that exists in RIDE, which is one of ride-sharing companies in our country. To put my title in context, service, no matter how good, will fail repeatedly because customer will perceive the service as of, I didn't share my, to put my title in context, service, no matter how good, will fail repeatedly because customer will perceive the service as of to be of poor quality, and that will lead to the creation of gap. As an overview, there are some reasons that this research is worthy of studying. Firstly, as Mamo indicates in his article, that the population of Addis Ababa is increasing significantly and the size of the city is expanding horizontally. As a result, transportation have become very important. And in recent years, transportation methods have built to be based on the mobile application. This mobile application make people take comfortable ride rather than using taxis and public buses. This smart application works like it identifies the location of the passengers and it moves them to their desired location with the shortest path, and then it calculates the total cost based on the distance and the time. And secondly, I feel that expected service quality should be delivered for our customers in order to be superior than the competitors. And number three, gap model are the most common measurement scale for service quality. However, there's less research conducted on service quality in ride-sharing company. Moving to the statement of the problem, before doing this research, I have conducted a preliminary investigation. Based on that, I have found some gap related with the study. According to customers and drivers, the company lack retaining existing customers and drivers, meaning that the customers can get more incentive while using the competitor's service, and like card, free miles, and many more. And drivers can earn greater commission while working the rival of the company. Another point is that customers are unable to call their order with voice package. Nowadays, people tend to use voice package rather than using normal cards. Also, there is a repeated occurrence of cancellation of customer order, adding that their mobile application in most cases it doesn't work. Lack of companies' website have made customers irritated. All this, in consequence, will lead to the creation of a standard gap emanating from absence of customer-driven standard, lack of service design, and poor physical evidence. And also, customers pointed out that fraudulent activity occurs at a start point, and some drivers disregard customers and create an uncomfortable environment. That will, in consequence, lead to the creation of delivery gap emanating from ineffective recruitment, lack of retaining, lack of training, employee not willing to perform, and many more. Thus, this paper assessed the gap that I have mentioned with respect to the gap model, and that will lead me to the objective of the study. The objectives are, number one, to assess if the company designed their service as per the customer's expectation, and number two, to identify if the company have a mechanism in retaining existing customers. And number three, to assess the challenges that the company face while delivering the service. Moving to the scope of the study of this paper revolves around the service gap, despite the fact that service gap model have 4 provider gap and 1 customer gap. However, this study assessed only 2 gaps, namely standard gap and delivery gap. Regarding the target customers, the questionnaire were distributed to final customers and drivers, as well as interview was conducted with the head marketing manager. Regarding the geographic location, the study was conducted in Addis Ababa, specifically at Bole, Magdalena, and Mexico, because at this area there is an expectation of high transaction and demand for the service. The time this paper assessed is only from 2019 up to 2021 Gregorian calendar. Moving to the research design and methodology, this study was designed in a descriptive research with qualitative and quantitative approach, qualitative with the use of questionnaire and quantitative with the use of conducting interview. The research used both primary and secondary data. Based on the recommendation of Malhotra, this study used the size of 150 customers and 50 drivers as a sample. The study used non-probability sampling method to gather both interview and questionnaire. Research employed 2 types of structured question for customers and drivers. The questionnaire that was filled by the customers was prepared under 5 Likert scale, and the customers question was filled by the drivers. Questionnaire was distributed to final consumer with through drivers, while the customer using the service to do that convenience sampling technique was used. In order to analyze and interpret customers' response, the study used descriptive data analysis technique in Excel form. To analyze and interpret the driver's response, the study used graph to present. To summarize the summary, to summarize the finding, percentage were computed to get the total pictures of the data. As I have mentioned before, questionnaire were distributed to customers and drivers. So we have 2 types of demographic characteristics. For research creditability purpose, 150 copies of 150 copies of the questionnaire distributed to target customers and 50 copies for full-time drivers. The data that was collected from customers, the majority encompassing female with the age group of 21 up to 26 with an educational background of first degree holders, and the majority have been using the service for 2 years. According to the research finding, the overall summary in relation with standard gap from customers' perspective, the variable were used service design, customer-driven standard, and physical evidence. As we have seen in this table, all the variable shows negative result, meaning that their expectation is higher than that of their perception. And also their mean score shows negative, meaning that there exists a standard gap in the right company. Moving to the performance gap from customer's perspective, the variable where human resource, roles of customers, and supply and demand. As we've seen, the variable are negative, which means expectation is higher than that of their perception. And also in here, the mean square shows negative. There exists a performance gap in right company. Looking to the driver's profile, all respondents were male, with the majority age group of 21 up to 26, with the educational background of first degree holders and others, and the majority have been working for 2 years. Regarding standard gap, the driver's response, the research finding in overall summary shows that the majority agreed to the variable of service design. However, they disagreed to customer-driven standard and physical evidence. Concerning the performance gap from driver's perspective, the majority were agreed to human resource and supply and demand. However, they disagreed to the roles of customers. As a conclusion, all the variable used in standard gap and performance gap from customer's perspective, it shows negative results, meaning that the company lacks retaining existing customers, their service design is not as per the customer's expectation, and there is a problem in delivering the service. As per the driver's perspective, the company have a good service design, physical evidence, human resource, and balanced supply and demand. However, customer-driven standard and roles of customer have a low acceptance. In general, the data shows that the company need to close the two provider gap, meaning the standard gap and performance gap, in order to deliver the expected service for the customers. As a recommendation, the application of RIDE should work for 3G and 2G speed, and also it should be easy for the customers to understand. RIDE should let customers to call their order with the full package, and RIDE also gives incentive for using their services. Also, RIDE should compensate the drivers and the customers for failed service. RIDE should make the vehicle comfortable and clean. RIDE should make their logo attractive and their logo and applications attractive because customers see tangible queue in service. RIDE should train drivers and drivers in a professional manner, because question raised by the customers, they should answer in a professional manner. The company should educate customers and how to service operators. RIDE should try to balance the demand and supply on weekend, holiday, and midnight by giving incentive and lowering price on weekdays.
Okay. Thank you very much, Iman, for that wonderful presentation. Okay, great. Yeah, that was indeed the perfect presentation. Congratulations, Iman. I really enjoyed it, and it was an eye-opener. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, you can prepare, or you can write your questions, because I will get back to you so that you can share it or give it to our presenters. Dagmawi, I am going to stop the screen you share, because now is the time for us to take a selfie. It is a virtual meeting and we can't take a picture. Therefore, our only option is to turn on our camera. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, please assist me in turning on your camera and smile. Yeah, I see so many smiling faces. It's Barak, Elias, Dagmawi, Iman, Sannites, Sophia, Ruth, Adila. Please turn on your camera. Thank you. Thank you. I'm still waiting for those of you who did not turn on your camera to turn it on so that we can take a picture. Yeah. And I'm still waiting for some of you to smile. Okay. Okay. Let me take one more. Oh, Sanite, let me stop the shared screen so that we can take one more picture. My sincere apologies. My sincere apologies. Yeah, keep on smiling. Brooke, I can say that you are smiling behind those face masks. We want you to be safe. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now our second presenter, feel free to share your screen. Yeah, Dr. Marie. Now you can share your screen. Okay, Dr. Marie, please unmute your mic. A virtual meeting without some technical glitch is not actually a virtual meeting. Therefore, we will wait for our next presenter to unmute his mic. Okay. Yeah, that way I can see you clearly. Can you proceed to sharing your screen? And perfect.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Zagmai. Today I'm presenting what my teammates and I did the senior project. Our project title is Online University Registration System for Centimere University, and our project involves around the current issue faced by students in the university when it comes to the registration process. The main problem of the exit system, which is a registration process used by the university, is that it's mainly manual, so it doesn't allow students to register by themselves, and it involves that students, especially new students, that they have to fill paper-based forms, and it takes a lot of time and effort to register. And another point or another problem of the current or the existing system is that it is very crowded during the registration period. And all these reasons add up to the reasons that it's very tiresome for registrar officers to encode student data into the database. So our main objective for this project was to fully automate the current system using an online system. And our specific objective was that to reduce the time takes to register and to reduce the inconvenience faced by students. And another point is that we have carried out different feasibility studies, mainly technical and economical feasibility studies, and we have concluded that our project is both technical and economically feasible. The significance of our project is that it reduces the time it takes for students to register, as they can do it from wherever they are and within a few minutes, unlike the current registration process, which can take up to a full day. Another significance of our project is that it allows the university to keep students' information in a well-documented way. So students' information is stored in a database. So this will make it easier for the university to make better decisions. The main beneficiaries of our projects are mainly students in the university, as our system makes it easy for students to register, and it also allows the university to minimize or to reduce the time it takes for the registration period. For our project, we have used a spiral method as a system development methodology, which is a software process model. So we have used spiral method, which allows us to implement our project in a iteration. Some of the limitations we have faced during our project is that it doesn't allow add and drop for now, and it only works for computer science department, but it can be expanded further to include other departments. The risks we have faced during our projects are time management issue and lack of in-depth knowledge about the inner working of the current process, as the inner working of the current process is very complicated and needs an in-depth knowledge. Some of the business rules, the main ones are the following. The first one is that the person should be a student of the computer science department at St. Mary University and should have an ID card. And the second point is that students or people who want to register for a course, which is a student, should have taken and passed the prerequisite for that. And for new students, their original documents should be verified, and the students should submit a copy of their original documents. When it comes to the implementation part, some of the technologies we have used to implement our project are, as a web server, we have used Apache Web Server to host our web application. And to store students' data and other related data, we have used a database known as MySQL database. And to implement the logic of our the logic used to implement our project, we have used PHP as a backend language, and we have used different connectivity tools such as MySQLi and video to connect with our database. Further, we have used sessions for storing variables that are used across different pages, which allows us to keep who is logged in and who's not. And we have used an MVC architecture pattern to implement our project. And finally, we have carried out testing and to find if there are any errors in our system, and we have tried to fix each one of the errors we have faced during our project. Next, I would like to focus on the functionalities that our system implements. So there are 5 roles or 5 actors in our project. The first one is a department officer, registrar officer, instructor, and student, and finally system admin. Each one of these actors have their own functionalities that or tasks that they can use the system for. I'll go through each one of them, or the main ones, in the next topic. So to begin with the login page, this is the login page used by every actor. So whether they are students or employees, they have to use this login page. So first they must select their their role, whether they are student or an employee. Then they must fill or enter their username and password, then click the login page, the login button. Next, the functionality we'll see is from the system admin's perspective. So there is a system admin actor. So the system admin can create an account for other employees. So to create an account for other employees, these employees can be instructors, department officers, and registrar officers. So the system admin must fill in this form. So he must fill in the full name, phone number, gender, employee ID, and the username and password, which is going to be used later on by that employee to log into the system. Additionally, the system admin can manage accounts that he or she has created previously. So if they want to suspend an employee's account, or if they want to change an information such as their phone number or their username, they can do this in this page by coming to this page. So they can manage employees account. Next, from using the account that was created by the system admin previously by by the system admin, the registrar officer can log into the system and then generate a PIN. This PIN is going to be used by new students to create an account. So when at first when the new student wants to create an account, he or she must go to the registrar office to get a PIN. So the registrar officer will log into the system and generate a PIN in this page. And this PIN is generated automatically by the system. And then after that, the registrar officer must click in the generate button. Next, the new student will go to the login page and then click in the register as new student, and then fill in the user ID and the PIN that he or she have got from the registrar officer previously. Once they have clicked the enter button, it will redirect them to the create account page. And as you can see in here, they will have to fill in their personal information, person to be contacted because of information, and their account information such as username, password, and other information. Once they finish filling this form, they will click in the create account button. Next, once they have finished this, they must go to the registrar officer to get approved by the registrar officer so that they can access their account. So the registrar officer will approve these students by checking their status. So if it is pending, the registrar officer will click in the tick button, then activate or approve that student. Now the student can log into the system using the username and password he has or she has created previously. And when that student wants to register for a course, they must go to the register for course button and click that. And then the system will automatically show them the courses that they can take. And accordingly, they can choose which courses they want to take. And next, they will click the register for the selected courses, and the system will show them the amount of money they have to pay. So the next step is that they have to go to the bank to pay the necessary amount, and then once they go to the bank clerk will give them a student ID and a PIN that proves that they have paid for the necessary amount. Then after returning from the bank, they have to put in their student ID and PIN or transaction ID they have got from the bank and click in the submit button. Finally, they have finished the registration process and they have now successfully registered for the last semester. Another functionality is of that the department officer can upload course catalog. So when there is a new course that's given by the department, let's say computer science, the department officer will enter the course code, the course name, select the department, credit hour, contact hour, and the semester and year that that course is going to be given in. Another functionality is that of the department is assigning instructors course. So this is using this page, the department officer can assign new courses for an instructor. So as you can see in here, it is formatted in a table form, and the department officer can assign course by clicking on the pencil button and assign new courses for each instructor. Next, from the perspective of the instructor, or which is another user or another role in our system, the instructor can view the courses assigned to him. And as you can see, for example, for the instructor Abarra Alamu, these courses have been assigned by the department. So there is civic and ethical education and programming fundamentals 1. This is the main functionality from the instructor point of view. Another functionality is that of the registrar officer can manage students. These students are different from the ones we have seen previously. These students have been already enrolled, and the registrar officer can activate their account or suspend. For example, if a student have been suspended for behavioral or academic reasons, the registrar officer can suspend their account by going to this page. Finally, concluding my presentation, our project's main objective was to allow students to register by themselves with minimal intervention from registrar workers. And throughout this project, we have implemented this proposed system using various techniques and tools. And as a recommendation, we are recommending that this system is implemented in real environment by the university to allow every actor involved in the university to get the full benefit of the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dagmari, for that wonderful presentation. Well, earlier I missed to introduce Dagmari's research title, and Dagmari's research is titled Online University Registration System for St. Mary's University. Therefore, Dagmari, thank you very much for that. Now it is the time for us to hear from Hanna Feisa. Hanna will be presenting her research titled An Assessment of Practices of Conservation and its Challenges in Case of Monuments and Statues in Addis Ababa. Therefore, Hanna Feisa, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. My research title is An Assessment of Practice of Conservation and its Challenges in Case of Monuments and Statues in Addis Ababa. So when we start from the introduction part, as we know, tourism is the activity of people traveling and staying in a place outside their usual environment for leisure, business, or other purpose for not more than 1 year. And heritage is linked to the past, that it presents some sort of inheritance to be passed down to current and future generations, both in terms of cultural and tradition and physical artifacts. And as we know, Ethiopia is rich in both natural and cultural heritage, also mixed heritage. And Addis Ababa, the present capital of Ethiopia, was established over 125 years ago by Emperor Menelik. Erecting monuments has an age-old history in Ethiopia. For example, we can see the Aksumite and the Tia monuments. So when we move to the statement of the problem, heritage tourism is highly undervalued and underutilized in Ethiopia and Addis Ababa. Although Addis Ababa has a potential diversified cultural heritage, whether it's movable, immovable, or tangible or intangible, but it fails to attract and retain and satisfy cultural tourists, and the city couldn't be able to use the resources efficiently and effectively. So these problems are also reflecting on our precious monuments. So this historical heritage needs protection for their important historical heritage. However, many of these heritage face problems. So this paper tried to assess the current conservation process for the monuments run by the government tourism sector, and it also tries to indicate the possible opportunity and solution to be considered by the government. So when it comes to the objective of the study, the general or the main objective of the study is to assess about the practice of conservation in case of monuments and statues that are found in Addis Ababa, and the specific ones are to describe the contribution of the monuments to assess the conservation practice of monuments, and to analyze the current status of the monuments and statues, and also to list the challenges regarding the process of conservation. So when it comes to the methodology, in order to achieve the objective of the research, qualitative methods was gathered using primary and secondary data. Governmental institutions like Addis Ababa Culture, Artists and Tourism Bureau and the Authority for Research and Conservation of Cultural Heritage are the major source of primary and secondary data. I used about four methods to collect the necessary data: questionnaire, interview, personal observation, and secondary data. Let's proceed to the results of the research. I used about mixed research approach, and in qualitative part of the study, 5 informants and 15 local residents were interviewed. And as we know, Addis Ababa Culture, Arts and Tourism Bureau registered about 17 historical monuments as our current time. And the historical monuments have been erected to represent the country's history, culture, political, and even status of the famous individuals from inside and outside Ethiopia. But for this research, I only used 7 of them. The statue of Archbishop Abuna Petros, the equestrian statue of Emperor Menelik, Victory Monument, Martyrs Monument, the statue of Lion of Judah, and the statue of Judah of Emperor Haile Selassie, and the Teglachin Monument. When you go to the first issue, it's about the monuments attractiveness and accessibility of the monuments. So as I mentioned earlier, there are key informants from Addis Ababa Culture, Arts and Tourism Bureau. And one of my key informants answered that since most of the monuments since most of the monuments are located at road section of the city, anyone can take a look at while passing or rounding them, being inside a car, but seeing from away is not good to get full information or details about the monuments and statues. So I don't think they are accessible. When I was observing in my field observation, I observed that there is no place for walking and parking to stop cars around the monuments due to their location, since they are located at roundabouts. And but in case of Teglachin Monument or the Ethiopian friendship, as you know, and both at Lion of Judah, at National Theatre, and at Lagahar, it's a little bit different. Tourists can see the monuments closely and take pictures as much as they want. Also at the Teglachin Monument, it's found in park, so anyone can sit inside the park and spend some time and enjoy the area. And as a conclusion, I conclude that most of the monuments of Addis Ababa are only accessible from far away. There's no doubt about the attractiveness of the monuments or the statues, and anyone can see them or visit them from far away. So the second issue was about the contribution of the monuments and the statues for Addis Ababa and also for Ethiopia. As you can see here, there are many lists. Most of our monuments tell our heroism in our history, so they can create positive image in the tourist's mind, creating opportunity for foreign tourists, bringing foreign currency, creating job for people around the tourist sites, boosting the local economy, and they have other contributions. For example, many monuments in Addis Ababa have a special architectural design. They can be a witness about our architectural history and our technology in our past. Also, when tourists came to Addis Ababa, they don't only visit the monuments. Usually, tour operators and guides sell tour packs, including the other attraction sites. For example, we can see Ntoto, Mercato, and other museums. So these are the contributions of the monuments. The other main issue in my result is the current status or condition of the monuments and statues. Addis Ababa Culture, Arts and Tourism Bureau mentioned that most of the monuments are in good condition and they are working really hard for protecting the monuments. There are few monuments that began to show some sign of aging, of course, but that happens because of the material they were made of. But as I observed in my field observation, my conclusion or my observation was different from what's said by the institution. By observing some of the monuments, I saw some defects and cracks on the monuments, or also since they are monuments are located at roundabouts, there are many cars crossing the road every day, every minute. So there will be some cracks on the monuments that are not visible from far away. And through time, this movements of many cars across the road will erode the monuments. So I concluded that most of the Addis Ababa monuments and statues are not in good condition. The other issues about their protection and conservation of the monuments. Also, a key informant from the institution was interviewed and gave the answer that the monuments are well protected and well conserved, but I don't think so. On my field observation, I observed that most of the monuments and statues are not protected and conserved well. There are dirts around the monuments that makes them lose their beauty or their aesthetics, and that have a negative impact on the material of the monuments, whether it's steel or bronze or other material. Most of the monuments are fading their colors. Actually, it's a common problem for most of our monuments. Regarding cleanliness issue, the Glatchen monuments, Martyrs monument, and Victory monuments are in good condition. When we compare them with the rest of the monuments, they are clean and they have a green area, and there are human labor that dig and place extreme plants and cut grass, and also they have a security guard. So I conclude that concerning conservation issue, there are much work to do, and most of our monuments found in Addis Ababa are not in good condition. The other issue is about the awareness of the society. The two institutions, CCH and AAC, we are currently working on creating awareness for the society. For example, they are preparing a brochure that contains detail about the monuments. They are working with television and radio stations. There are also TV programs. Also, there is a group discussion and training with different bodies like for selected conservationist media persons, university professors, architects, and others. These are the measures they are taking to aware the society about the monuments. And they also, a key respondent from the institution described that according to the institution, the community is not well aware of the monuments and statues. Most people in Addis Ababa don't know about the history, location, and current status of the monuments and statues. When you compare the number of tourists who visit the monuments in Addis Ababa, the foreign tourists are much greater than the local ones. And on my field observation, I observed that the awareness of the society is not good enough. Also, I observed that the society doesn't even care about the monuments. For instance, at Archbishop Abuna Petros monument and at Minilik monument, there are street peoples and addicted individuals using the surroundings of the monument as a bed or as a resting area, and also as toilet. That's a very unpleasant thing to watch. Preceding there are factors that affect the monuments. For example, atmospheric pollutants, biological growth extracted by cleaning or persisting damp conditions, the use of hard dense cement mortars for polluting the repair workers, poor architecture design, and other details like biological growth, like algae and other plants. They are growing on the monument and that are affecting the monuments and shortening the age of the heritage. The other is the challenge to conserve the monuments and the statues, challenges the institution face to conserve while conserving the heritage. We can see or we can list many challenges. For example, shortage of skillful person, lack of fund, governmental policies, that means policy clash between governments and governmental bodies, lack of conservation laboratory. We don't exactly have conservation laboratory. We have other archaeological laboratories, but we don't have conservation laboratories. Lack of technology and upgraded equipment, corruption, lack of well-organized plan, lack of enough information, and we can see many others as a challenge. So as a conclusion, in general, heritage conservation is about prolonging the life of cultural heritage. Conservation is a cultural, artistic, and technical and crafts activity based on humanistic and scientific studies and systematic research. Conservation must respect the cultural context. As I mentioned earlier, people erect monuments and statues for different purposes. So the finding of this study shows that monuments in Addis Ababa are attractive enough to generate a big revenue or big income for the city or also for Ethiopia. There is much more work to do, and we are not doing enough for them and to protect them. So as a recommendation, I recommend the first recommendation is to create awareness for general public by means of preparing different kinds of activities and social gatherings around the cultural heritage or the monuments, and awareness creation to decision makers and politicians, not only for the society, but for politicians, for artists and other peoples, and promoting the monuments through different ways, like social media, magazines, websites, and documentaries, and some other ways, and adding more human labor to clean the area and green plants, and also hiring people that protect or that guard the monument. And the last recommendation is I forward is for the preparation of conservation in manual for architects. Thank you for your time. This is my paper. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Hannah, for that wonderful presentation. And I will take this presentation as a sign for myself to visit some monuments and statues that can be found in Addis Ababa. Therefore, Hannah, thank you very much for your presentation. Now is the time for us to hear the research from Zara Yacob Desalegn. Zara, can you please start your camera and unmute your mic? In the meantime, Zara Yacob Desalegn's speech research is titled Impact of Urban Regeneration on Historical Buildings, the case of Addis Ababa Arada subcity. Zara Brook, my sincere apologies for mispronouncing your name completely. Zara Brook, yeah.
Yes. Can you see?
Yeah. Over to you. You can start. I think your slide is on the last page.
Yes. And hold on a second. I'm going to fix it. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but I think someone's speaker is loud. It's interrupting our sound system.
So thank you for giving me this chance. My name is Zara Desalegn. I'm a graduate. I have gotten a bachelor degree on tourism and hospitality management from St. Mary University. The research title, as you can see here, is the impact of urban regeneration on historical buildings in the case of Addis Ababa Arada subcity. So there are 7 major points I'm going to point while presenting, and these are the background of the study, the statement of the problem, the objectives of the study, the significance of the study, result and discussion, summary and discussion, and conclusion and recommendation. So I'm going to start with background of the study. So as we know, there are many historical buildings in Addis Ababa. Among all of the buildings, there are sites that are being dilapidated and ruined due to many reasons. Therefore, the city is losing the historical and the economic benefit, and the society tends to forget about the sites. So why is this research chosen? It's because to examine how the sites are well maintained and the level of attention assigned to these historical heritages. The other question we need to ask is, how urban regeneration is connected to tourism. Are they interrelated or are they interconnected? And the answer is yes, they are interconnected. How so? Because both of them effectively contribute socio-economic growth, urban change, long-term sustainability, and also tourism is a key to the resolution of social problem caused by economic decay. There are two benefits that can be mentioned to explain the necessity of urban regeneration, like tourism, as I mentioned earlier. These are financial and social benefits. So to keep interest of the time, I'm going to be forwarding. So the next step I'm going to discussing is the statement of the problem. So the statement of the problem says that, as I mentioned earlier, there are historical buildings in Addis Ababa that are being destroyed and used for another purpose. Like, for example, the Sheikh Hojali Palace, which is in Gulale subcity, has been registered as heritage, but it didn't get much attention for protecting the buildings. How so? How is it not being protected? So according to the source from researchers, the palace is currently in a dangerous situation and some of the walls of the buildings have been cracking because there has not been repairs or maintenance done on the palace. So overall, there is high aspiration for modernization than for maintaining the traditional urban forms and architectural designs. One of the challenges of urban regeneration is, as I mentioned earlier, there's high aspiration for modernization, there is a policy clash, there is a lack of awareness. So due to that, these historical buildings or heritages have not been given due their attention. As you can see here, there is a lack of awareness, lack of government attention, and lack of funds to preserve these historical buildings. Why does this matter? Why does historical buildings matter? Or why does it need to be discussed? Because they are irreplaceable. So if not protected or if not preserved, it will be lost and not be passed to the future generation. So what's the purpose of this research I'm trying to discuss? It is to provide a recommendation and show some way forward the importance of the preservation of these historical buildings as a way to show where civilization to the people in the present and the future, as these historical buildings have started, and a map and to show the political, economic, cultural, environmental, and social status of the past and what it implies to the present and in the next future generation. So the next one I'm going to be discussing is the objectives of the study. There are two objectives of the study set for this research. The general objective is to explore the urban regeneration practice on historical buildings and how they are protected as heritage. And the specific objectives are, there are three specific objectives. These are assessing how historical buildings are preserved and protected. The second one is how examining how urban regeneration is affecting the historical buildings. The third and the last one is identifying how citizens perceive the historical buildings and the impact of modernization in an urban sense. So the other one I'm going to be discussing is the significance of the study. So before diving in, we need to know the term what heritage is. As I mentioned earlier, heritage is a set of goods that is inherited from the past ancestors to the present and that can be passed to the future. So what does it why does it matter what I'm discussing about what I'm trying to discuss? Because historical buildings are part of the immovable heritage, and heritages have aesthetic, socio-cultural, scientific, and an economic value, which creates job opportunity to those who doesn't have job. So the significance of this study is to build good imagery for Addis Ababa, protecting the environment from pollution, decreasing unemployment, and preserving the historical buildings to the future generation. So after assessing all the data collection by using two kinds of methodologies like primary and secondary data, and also there are two kinds of data collection method that has been used. These are the qualitative and quantitative methods. And after all the necessary data collection methods, here I'm going to discuss the results. So as you can see here, based on the mentioned, I have mentioned earlier, the general and specific objective listed in chapter 1 earlier, it asked 30 educated citizens, and the respondents have agreed that the historical buildings are not being protected, whereas, sorry, as you can see, 83.3% of the respondents have agreed that the historical buildings are not being protected, whereas the remaining 16.7% do not agree so. So this implies that the majority concurs to the fact that the historical buildings should be given due their attention. So furthermore, although Addis Ababa is a city that is growing demographically and economically, and as we know, Addis Ababa is one of the fastest growing city in Ethiopia, also in Africa, also in the entire world. But based on the finding assessed, 73.3% of the respondents fall under the category that the historical buildings have not been given due their attention as heritage, not only in Arada sub-city, but also in Addis Ababa entirely, or meaning all in 11 sub-cities. So, however, the remaining 26.7% of the respondents think otherwise. So this accentuates that the government should give a thorough consideration to the community through different mechanisms of educational approaches that emulates a positive influence to the mass, such as media. Medias can be like formal medias and also social medias, like magazines, brochures, and also social medias using Facebooks. So these kinds of medias, the government can influence the community by using these kinds of medias. So as I mentioned earlier, urban regeneration has a strong connection with tourism because because urban regeneration is about improving the social, environmental, and economic lifestyle. Although it has its significance, but it has also its challenges. So because during the practice of it, the historical buildings are not being protected. They are being ruined one way or the other due to lack of study and lack of communication between governmental offices, because there is a governmental policy clash. So henceforth, based on the findings collected, 93.3% of the respondents agreed that urban regeneration is affecting the historical buildings, whereas the rest of the 6.7% did not. As I'm going to try to mention that as a reminder, urban regeneration is not considered as a disadvantage or a demerit for a city or for a capital level or for a national level. Rather, it is important because Addis Ababa's modernization from time to time is owed to the city being the home of African Union and other international organizations. So urban regeneration has brought social, political, and economic significance to the city, and this has increased both leisure and business tourism. So I mentioned earlier, it is one of the important subject ever. Urban regeneration is one of the important subject ever. So in spite within this parallel, heritages like historical buildings should be protected and developed and preserved for the future generation. So the other thing that should be considered is how the respondents perceive these historical buildings. So according to the findings of this data collection, 83.3% of the respondents agreed that it is a means of defining identity in the social and citizen sense, where the other 10% said that it is much an individual perspective than it is social and citizens. So this implies that these buildings from the past should be maintained because it shows the history of urban regeneration, urban civilization. Sorry. The other issue that needs to be discussed is how many historical buildings are there in Addis Ababa. Based on the findings assessed, there are 315 historical buildings. From those, 202 buildings are found in Arada sub-city. So this clearly indicates that Arada has more heritages than other sub-cities. But the problem is seen that the buildings are diminishing as modern buildings is being built. There were historical buildings that were almost going to be demolished or going to be destroyed. Example, Seit Anbit is which is one of the Ola Cinema in Addis Ababa was going to be destroyed because of lack of awareness from other community or other governmental offices. If not for the influence of Arada subsidy administration through communication between different organizations or using social medias like Facebook, it would have been destroyed. So to finalize it, the remedies for the historical buildings to be protected and preserved for the future generation is followed by professionals to protect the heritages. For those that are nearly being destroyed, Arada Subsidy Administration communicates with Addis Ababa Culture and Tourism Bureau, and the Bureau registers the historical buildings and maintains those that were caused due to natural and man-made disaster. Now I'm going to show you the pictures that some of the examples in Arada subsidy that we're going that is being dilapidated due to lack of awareness and due to lack of governmental attention, according to heritage database. So as you can see here, these are the few examples, as you can see, that these buildings are not being well maintained due to lack of, as I said earlier, lack of governmental attention, lack of society's awareness. As you can see on the top left, Akbar Ali Abdul Hussein residence. On the top right, you can see Afanugus Nasibu Maskali. On the bottom left, you can see Alfred Ilgir residence, and the bottom right, you can see Balambaras Wende Samad residence. So these are the few examples of the historical buildings that are not being well maintained and due to lack of awareness. So I'm going to discuss about the summary in the summary discussion. As I said earlier, urban regeneration brings improvement in economic, physical, social, and environmental conditions of an area. Although it has its significances, as I mentioned earlier, it has also its challenges. One of which is on the subject of protecting the historical buildings. Well-known researchers have agreed that when urban regeneration is being practiced in historical areas, there is an attempt of destroying the heritages due to lack of attention and knowledge. So furthermore, historical buildings are buildings that possesses architectural, aesthetics, and historical values. So historical buildings in Addis Ababa are heritages that are irreplaceable and priceless properties, because if not protected or if they are destroyed, it will cause financial and monetary loss. So in the present time, consequently, some of the historical buildings have not been given attention due to high aspiration for modernization than maintaining the traditional architectural design. So as I mentioned earlier, in Addis Ababa, there are about 315 historical buildings found from 11 subsidies. Arada subsidy is the one that holds most of the historical buildings. As you can see here, 202 historical buildings are protected and 6 buildings were ruined. As a result, the research had asked that it was due to not knowing the rightful property of the heritages, which is one of the causes during the protection of the historical buildings. So the respondents were asked how these buildings should be preserved. So to keep the interest of the time, I'm going to be diving at the conclusion and recommendation. So I'm going to be discussing the recommendation on how to protect or preserve these historical buildings. So cities where the historical buildings are located are among the most prominent tourist attractions that play a significant role for the tourism development. So that being so, as shown, the history of urban civilization, or how a city gets its identity. So when a city is being developed, modern touches and technologies are introduced, but there's a less often there's less attention for historical buildings to be considered and to be well maintained. So in addition, the viability and in identity of the city is presented by the manageability of the historical buildings and physical concern of the urban region. So this doesn't come as a coincidence, as the findings of this research suggest that the dwellers of the city consider historical buildings to be an integral part of their national pride and identity. So this research strongly recommends the following lists. So there are 5 recommendations, as you can see here. There are 5 recommendations listed in order to protect these historical buildings when urban regeneration is being practiced. The first one is taking lessons from developed countries like Italy, who has more experience about preserving heritages. We can take brief points like humanizing resources, enhancing public use, because the one that needs to be discussed is humanizing the resources, the areas, because there is an attempt of neglecting the areas, the historical buildings from the city. So it needs to be included, not excluded, so that it can be protected. The other recommendation that this research recommends is the media should play a major role for the protection of the historical buildings. As I mentioned earlier, formal medias and social medias play a major role for the protection of historical buildings. As I've assessed the data, Arada Subsidy Administration used Facebook's and also other social media mechanisms to, by influencing the community in order to protect these kinds of historical buildings. So media should play a major role to protect these historical buildings. The other one is the governmental offices need to coordinate, because during urban regeneration, new projects tend to be built and historical buildings may be destructed. One of the challenges of urban regeneration is there is a governmental policy clash, because every governmental offices work for development, but if not coordinated, if not matched, there will be an attempt of destroying these buildings, or even other infrastructures. So they need to be coordinated. They need to be they need to be matched. The fourth one is there needs to be a research about the historical buildings so that they can get much attention, because these historical buildings have not been given much attention. So they have not been given research. So there needs to be a research for them in order to be included, and they need to be so that they can feel the society can feel the belongingness. And the last one is it needs to be put under the master plan so that they won't be affected by any kind of physical harm. And also it can be included under analysis, recommendation, and proposals, so that if it's included into the master plan, it can be promoted as a tourist resource. And also the society can be aware of this historical buildings. So that being so, this is all I'm going to do about the research. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Sarah Brooke, for that amazing presentation. Let me stop your screen. Okay. Now, apologies. I was speaking while muting my mic. The perks of being in an online meeting. Therefore, Sarah Brooke, that was indeed a wonderful presentation, and I would like to congratulate all of our presenters, Elias, Iman, Dagmami, Hanna, and Zarako. All of you did an excellent job on presenting your research. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, now is the time for us to discuss, to share our ideas or our understanding with regards to the research that were presented by our graduate students. Therefore, the floor is open for questions and discussions. Therefore, if you have questions, you can raise your actual hand, unmute your mic, raise your virtual hand by using the reaction buttons. I mean, the possibilities are endless. As a reminder, the first presenter's speech was about the role of organizational culture on employee performance, and it was presented by Elias. The second presenter, Iman's speech, was about service quality gap, And the third presenter's speech revolved around online registration for SMU, or St. Mary's University. And the third presentation was about monuments and statues in Addis Ababa. And our last but definitely not the least presenter's speech was focused on the impact of our urban renovation on historical buildings. Therefore, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you can hear me, right? This virtual room is oddly silent. Yeah, feel free to unmute your mic and share your questions. Okay. Well, okay. So until we get questions from our participants, maybe they're having difficulty to unmute their mic or use the chat room. Therefore, my first question, I will raise a question and I would give our participants to interrupt me whenever they're free. Therefore, my first question is for Elias. Elias, are you with us? Elias, yeah, I can see you there. Okay, so your research revolved around or focuses on the role of organizational culture on employee performance, and it was particularly focused on FANA Broadcasting Corporation. Therefore, what is the major takeaway of your research? What do you think is the major takeaway of your research? Can't hear you. Yeah.
What I understand from this research was that organizations do not give much attention to the organizational, the cultural setup for their employees. This is what I realized from my research.
Okay, thank you. But do you think that, I mean, the culture in general, the national culture, we as Ethiopians, are the way we behave in a workplace, the way we operate or perform in a workplace impacted or directly impacted the general performance of this television station?
The national culture has too much impact on this organization because it's the FANA Broadcasting Corporation is operated in Ethiopia, so the employees are within the Ethiopia. Therefore, as I said at the beginning, culture is an implicit assumption. Therefore, this assumption or this belief about the work, about the time management, about the other factors affect the employee's performance, and this employee's performance also affects the performance of the organization as well.
Okay, so as a researcher, for instance, I myself struggle to change or to get out of my comfort zone and try new things when it comes to my professional life, because, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm programmed to act in a certain way. Therefore, what is your recommendation? For instance, as a society, what should we do to improve our performance in a workplace?
So, as recommended in my research, the organizations should do the frequent cultural audits. They should revise their work environment, because working environment affects the spirit of the employees. Therefore, frequent cultural audits is necessarily, as I recommend in my research.
Thank you very much, Elias. I mean, I'm going to give you a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. At least, you know, feel free to use the virtual buttons. Yeah, you can clap for him. Wonderful. Okay, I see Zara Brook raising your hand. Do you have a question?
Maybe it's Mason line. I'm using the laptop. I do have one question for for your presentation and comment for Sarah.
Yeah, Miss Sanis, your voice is not clear. Can you position your mic so that we can hear you clearly?
Okay, what about now?
Okay, we'll try. Okay, proceed, please proceed.
Dagmar's presentation was about the online system. So in his presentation, he mentioned that the system will reduce a lot of time invested by the students and also the St. Mary's University registrar office. So my question is, what about the cost? How much does this system reduce the cost of production, I can say? So have you considered, is it cost effective? Is it cost, the effectiveness of the cost for the system? Can you tell us something about this one? Sorry, the other, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Miss Sanis. Continue.
Thank you. The Zarabrook, he sits next to me. So it's a very interesting presentation, first of all, I would like to say. And in your presentation, you mentioned that out of the 314 historical buildings that's in Addis, the majority of them are in Arada subsidy. So does it have, I'm always looking at the economic implication. Does it have an economic implication for the Arada subsidy? Obviously, I assume it has, but does the system or the Arada subsidy administrators use that benefit they get from the historical buildings if they are getting now to also protect the buildings by themselves? This is my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Miss Sanait. Well, I lost you at some place. I feel like your first question was directed to Dagmawi about the cost benefit analysis, whether he considered the cost. And your second question was?
Dagmawi.
Okay, still Dagmawi. Okay, Dagmawi, please unmute your mic and respond to Miss Sanait's question.
Okay, thank you. To answer Sanait's question, whether our project is cost effective or not, the university already uses a system for viewing grades and other tasks for keeping students' information in a database. So if implemented by the university, if the university implements our system, it will only cost a few amount of money, since there is already an existing system. So our system will just be adding to the systems that the university is already using. Additionally, it will reduce the cost since the current registration process involves a lot of paper-based and other processes, such as it reduces the time. So when that time is measured in cost, it will reduce the cost, and it will not cost that much to implement our system, since it's already they are already using a server and database to store student information. So it will reduce the cost that way. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dagmawi, for that wonderful response. Ms. Sanais, are you satisfied with this response, or do you need more explanation?
Sorry?
Okay. Is your question answered, fully answered by Dagmawi?
Yes, he is addressed.
Okay, perfect. Therefore, I'm going to give you a round of applause for that answer. Yeah. Good job, participants. Good job. Okay, now we have another question from our participant. Hannah, can we conclude that the monuments in Addis Ababa are not simply protected by observation? Don't you think it's important to consult professionals in the field? Hannah, yeah.
I was not. Yeah, there's not. There's much more work to do, but I think the government and the stakeholders are not doing much. So I'm not insulting them, but I'm pointing out or I'm telling about their weakness. So I'm not insulting them.
Okay, well, Hannah,
Can you describe more your question?
The question, okay, it's not my question. It was written, it was sent to me via a direct message in the Zoom chat room. Therefore, I think out of sight, you can send me another text message if I misquote your question or if if I did not explain it properly. I think what Atofisa is trying to say is the method you used to gather information is only from observation. Am I right?
No, I gathered information like primary and secondary data. I use secondary primary data, interview questionnaire I mentioned earlier.
Perfect.
For 15 local residents and 5 employees at the institutions, and also there are 10 employees at Addis Ababa Culture, Arts and Tourism Bureau. So I mentioned them as a key informant. I was sharing the PowerPoint.
Okay, therefore, if you used all those data gathering tools, do you think that, I mean, your research is backed with evidence? Do you think that your research is entirely scientific? I mean, yeah. I feel like Atofisa wants to know that your conclusion or discussion in your document is not biased from personal opinion.
No.
Perfect.
I don't think so. I'm confident about my conclusion.
You should say, no, it's not. The response should be, no, it's not. Okay. Thank you very much, Anna, for that response. Okay. Now the next question goes to Zara Yaqub. And I mean, Zara Abruk. I don't know why I keep calling you Zara Yaqub. Okay. Zara Abruk, well, your research was titled Impact of, or it was focused on the impact of urban renovation on historical buildings. Of course, it is obvious, or it is public knowledge that we should, renovate, or we should work towards modernization and all that stuff. And at some point, at some particular points during your presentation or your speech, you said that the government should influence by using social media. And do you think the government can even control social media? I mean, do you think it is even in the hands of the government to be in charge of controlling what people can and cannot do when it comes to using different social media platforms? What are your thoughts on this, Zara Abruk?
Thank you for giving me this chance. Sorry. Thank you for giving me this chance. Well, the government can coordinate with other offices so that they can, as I mentioned earlier, the governmental offices can influence the society with by using medias, as I said that. But you asked that is it possible that that the government is can it control the media? Well, not possibly, but the government can communicate with other offices or sub-regional offices with them and communicate with them, and then it can communicate with them in terms of like as I said, Facebooks and also brochures and also other kinds of medias by communicating with other departments or sub-regions, regional governmental offices. So that's what I meant to say.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so therefore, I misunderstood you. My apologies. Therefore, that's what you try to imply, Therefore, what you try to imply is that social media can be one of the platforms the government should use to prevent or at least minimize problems related to urban regeneration and destroying our historical buildings. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
And okay. And thank you very much for that response. I'm still going to give you a round of applause. Good job, ladies and gentlemen. Good job. Okay, now a question is loading for Dagmari. Dagmari, get ready, but until your question is fully sent to me, my next question will be to Iman. Iman, I can see you there. Yeah, and I really like your presentation. Maybe it's because we ladies should stick together. Maybe that's the reason. Yeah. I'm not sure. I hope the men are not disappointed with that, but that was indeed a wonderful presentation. And you focused on service quality gap. Therefore, with your recommendation, I mean, after all, the service quality is intangible. It is very hard for us to say, I mean, to fully have a grasp or an idea of what works and what does not work. Therefore, how do you, I mean, what do you think is the right way for us, at least customers, or for those drivers to fully get the idea of what the customer wants and provide that service, more specifically when it comes to ride, for instance, the service, when we talk about the service quality, the service starts when you try to, I mean, order a ride or a lift by using the internet connection. Therefore, for instance, when something happens, when something political or, you know, I want to go in detail with that, but for instance, when the internet is disconnected on a national level, or when the network does not work, or when factors like this affect the entire performance of this company, more particularly, right? How do you think they can entertain or they can keep their customers satisfied by still delivering their service?
Thank you very much for the question. If you remember, when 15 days there was not an internet connection and the mobile connection were not working. At that time, the ride were using the billboards on the cars, and customers can see and they can use the service while seeing the billboards. Or they can use the phone call with the short numbers. Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. But was that effective? I mean, for instance, if I am a customer, therefore, yeah. Don't you think, do you think that the billboards or the other mitigation system you just mentioned can solve this problem and keep the customer satisfied?
No, it doesn't, because they cannot be safe. The application is safer for customers because it tracks from the main office. However, if there's no internet and there is no connection, it's hard to satisfy the customers for leaving the service for drivers. Because, as I have mentioned in the statement of the problem, drivers have a problem in delivering the service. Customers doesn't communicate with the right employees and the manager. They contact with the drivers of the customers. So to satisfy the customers is not the billboard is not satisfactory for them.
Okay, so what should we do as a researcher? What is the best way or the best solution when things like this happen? Because this is
the only way
is out of
to
their
do
control.
Is the only thing to do is the billboard or the phone calls. That's my recommendation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Iman and Breeze. I am going to give you a round of applause. Yeah. Okay. Now we have another question for Dagmari, and it is from Tanis Gangarmai. The question is, if your system is accepted by the university, how compatible is it with the current database of the registrar office, and what is the implementation period? I think he's trying to ask you, how long will it take for your system to be fully implemented at the university? Therefore, he also said that as a recommendation, you can add an online instructor's evaluation system. Therefore, Dagmar, is it possible to add an instructor's evaluation system with the system you developed? I'm not an IT person, therefore I can't clarify this question, but take it away, Dagmar.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. For the university to implement our system, if given the chance, it will only take a few months to integrate it with the existing system used by the university. And while developing our system, we have tried to simulate the database used by the university, currently used by the university, as much as we can, so that if our system is needed at any time, we can easily integrate it with the system. And to answer the other question, how long? I think I've already answered that question. It will take a few months to integrate it with the existing system. And the other question was that whether we can include, or our system has instructor evaluation. The instructor, if the question is about whether the instructor can enter or grades of students for records or evaluate the students, yes, our system is able to, or we can, the instructor can enter students' grades for students he or she has taught for their respective courses. But if the question is about evaluating instructors, no, our system doesn't evaluate instructors, but instructors can enter evaluation of students' grade. So yeah, that's my answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dagmar. But how long is a few months, for instance? Is it 2, 3? When you say it might take a few months, what is the range?
Yeah, we don't have an exact date or an exact period, but yeah, we haven't exactly figured that part out yet. It will take. It will not take more than 2 months at most. At most.
Well, I will take your word for that. Okay, therefore, thank you very much, Dagmari. And that was indeed an excellent response for the question raised. Therefore, for the sake of time, we will proceed to the second part of our session. And during the session, we will hear presentations from 4 of our students or graduate students. Therefore, our first presenter is Ruth Channe from St. Mary's University. Ruth will deliver her research, deliver a speech from her research titled The Effectiveness of Internal Audit in the Public Sector, the case of Addis Ababa, #2 Medium Taxpayers Branch Office. Ruth Channe, the floor is yours. Ruth, please unmute your mic. Okay, perfect. We can't hear you. No. Unfortunately, your voice is not audible, Ruth. Can anyone hear? You can tell me through the chat box if. And while we wait for Ruth to fix her mic, do we have
Bethlehem, can I make a suggestion? Until until Ruth fixes that problem, maybe we can proceed with the second presenter and get back to Ruth. Thank you.
My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. I was actually talking to myself, muting the mic. My mic is muted, and I was calling on Sabila and Saron. Sabila and Saron, I hope you can hear me now. Yeah, finally. Okay. Perfect. While we wait for Sabila and Saron to share their screen, their research is titled Assessment of Challenges and Benefits of the Adoption and Implementation of IPSAS in Some Selected NGOs in Ethiopia. Therefore, what are the challenges and what are the benefits? They will tell us when they are ready to present their research. Like I said earlier, an online meeting without some technical glitch, it is a physical meeting. Therefore, okay, while we wait for Sabila and Saron to proceed, Titina or Itbarek, if either of you are ready, we can start. We can start with you. Yeah. Titina. Yeah, I can see you, Titina. Hi there. Yeah, please unmute your mic. Titina, unmute your mic. Okay. I think I can hear you, Titina.
Wait a minute.
Okay, therefore, Titina's research is titled The Role of Employee Recruitment and Selection on the Organization Performance, the case of Wagagan Bank. Therefore, Tana is about to share her screen and she will start the presentation any minute now. Perfect.
Okay, thank you for giving me this chance. My name is Tana Meltamo and I came from the Department of Management. So my research title is The Role of Employee Recruitment and Selection on Organization Performance in the case of Wagagan Bank. Recruiting and selecting the foremost qualified representatives is the primary and the key determinants of organizational capacity to build and accomplish its objective. So recruitment is a continuous process whereby the firm attempts to develop a pool of qualified applicants, whereas selection is to identify and employ the best qualified individuals for a specific position. So as Armstrong implied that human resource play a major role in the success of organization. So managing human resource is the primary key to organizational success. So as we know, Ethiopia is one of the most underbanked countries in the world, as National Bank's annual report implied. So Wagagan Bank is one of the private banks that were incorporated as a share company. So the main focus of this research is to assess the role of recruitment and selection practice on organizational performance in Wagagan Bank, specifically in the head office. When we come to the statement of the problem, in our today's business world, every organization whose aim is doing business productivity depends on their successive human resource planning. So the success of organizations depends on the caliber of the manpower that steers their day-to-day affairs. When the right person is selected, the productivity of the selected person tends to be high or meet the standards set by the organization. Also, as Armstrong implied, it is found that recruitment and selection practice has vast contribution on organization performance. So there's a saying that says GIGO, garbage in or garbage in, garbage out. So in order to have a good output, we must have a good input. Otherwise, the other will be. And so this research is, the researcher is interested to study on this area, since recruitment and selection has a huge role to most organizations, especially the bank industry at current time, which contributes to organizational accomplishment of their objective. So this study has two objectives, general objective and specific objectives, and the general objective is same as the general objective, the title, and have 5 specific objectives. The first one is to determine the recruitment practice followed by Wagagan Bank. The second one is to determine the selection practices followed by Wagagan Bank. The third one is to investigate the major employee selection criteria currently applied in Wagagan Bank. The fourth one is to examine the major factors or problems that affect Wagagan Bank recruitment and selection process. And lastly, to assess the contributions of recruitment and selection in organizations' performance in Wagagan Bank. So when we come to the research design and methodology part, I have used descriptive research design, and I had 213 target population, and I had a 68 sample size, and I used Tauri-Yamane formula in order to calculate the sample size. And I have used simple random sampling technique. I have used both primary and secondary sources of data. And I have used questionnaires and interviews. And for the method of data analysis, I've used descriptive data analysis, frequency table, mean, and graphs. It will be shown in the other slides. So when we come to the response rates, 68 questionnaires were distributed and 61 were returned, and thus the response rate is 89.7%. When we come to the demographic characteristics, 40 of them were male and 21 of them were female. And when we come to the age, the most of the respondents, 30 of them, are in the age between 31 to 40. And when we come to the education level, 35 of them have first degree holders, and 21 of them worked in the organization between 6 up to 10 years. And when it comes to the means of vacancy in the evaluation process, 50.8% of the respondents replied that they heard about the vacancy of their current job with newspaper. And for the evaluation process, 65.6% of the respondents replied that the interview were used. And for the source of recruitment and selection criteria, 49.2% of the respondents replied that they applied and passed an external vacancy. And when it comes to the selection criteria, 57.4% of the respondents replied that formal education is used as a selection criteria in Wagagan Bank. And when it comes to the factors affecting the selection process, 50.8% of respondents replied that number of applicants is the factors affecting the major factor that affect the selection process. And almost 61 of them, all of them replied that they think effective recruitment and selection of employee contribute for the bank's performance. And when it comes to 60.7% of the respondents replied that it highly contribute to bank's performance. So after analyzing this data, I have concluded and recommended. When it comes to the conclusion part, Wagagan Bank follows recruitment practice, which mostly uses newspaper as vacancy announcements, and interview will be drawn as an evaluation process method after the vacancy announcement. And the organization usually uses external sources in order to recruit qualified and experienced employees. And the organization usually uses formal education as employee selection criteria. And concerning factors affecting employee selection process, the number of application or the number of applicants is the major influence on employee selection process. Also, respondents approved that effective recruitment and selection of employee highly contribute to the organization performance. When it comes to the last part of this slide, it's the recommendation part. So the first one is the bank mostly uses newspaper-based vacancy announcement to attract external applicants, but it is recommended to use other methods, job sites, social medias, and other methods. So, and also the second recommendation is the organization needs to consider applying on other evaluation processes equally other than interview, because in order to achieve desired organizational performance. And the third one is to encourage employees to perform well. The company needs to assess the possibility of promotion that for the employees that performed well. And the fourth one is the manager of this organization should focus and must give high attention for internal recruitment, because external recruitment is a little costly and takes longer time. And the fourth one is, while recruiting, the HR manager should avoid and reduce the factor from pool of applicants by using preliminary interview and removing immediately those applicants with least qualified applicants to save time and to screen the race carefully. So since the banking industry is becoming highly competitive, the management of the bank should frequently give emphasis on recruitment and selection process to maintain sustainable competitive advantage. So this is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanna, for that wonderful presentation and for stepping up and filling up for us before your schedule. That was indeed a great presentation. Therefore, thank you. Now our second presenter is, well, I would say
Okay, am I audible now? Am I audible? So the topic I chose to do my research on is the effectiveness of internal audit in the public sector in the case of Addis Ababa number 2 medium taxpayers branch office. In this presentation, I'll try to cover the portions of my paper, which is the introduction, the statement of the problem, the objective, the significance of the study, the scope, the methodology, the conclusion, and finally the recommendation. To start off with the introduction, internal audit evolved steadily with the progress of management science after World War II, with the implementation of Sarbanes-Oxley Act. The professional exposure and value was enhanced as many internal auditors were required in order to help the companies, help them to comply with the rules and regulations that were set by the nations. And any place where there is a business transaction, it's inevitable that you'll find some kind of fraud, some kind of fraud and intentional and unintentional for money management practice. And in order to avoid this, there's no better choice than to hire very competent internal auditors who abide to their professional ethic. When we come to the effectiveness of internal auditing in any specific organization, it's a matter of considerable debate, but international auditing standards, the International Ministry of Finance module prepared to train internal auditors, and the organizations on internal auditing training modules, rules and regulation will help to the great extent in determining it. For this research, I've chosen a public institution, the Addis Ababa number 2 medium taxpayers branch office. This branch office was formerly under the Ethiopia Revenue and Gumruk Authority. The institution that we know today came into existence on July 14, 2008, by the merger of the Ministry of Finance, the Ethiopian Customs Authority, and the Federal Inland Revenue Authority. When we come to the statement of the problem, Godson indicated that internal audit oversight addresses whether public sector entities are doing what they're supposed to do, and also it helps to detect and deter public corruption. A survey conducted by Salem Development Consultants in collaboration with the Federal Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission revealed Ethiopia Customs and Revenue Authority to be the most corrupted government office, followed by the Construction Permit and Land Administration Office. The survey also indicated that the lack of against those who commit the crime and the lack of evidence, again, the lack of enough evidence available in order to convict those who commit the crime, and the lack of proper internal control that's in place in order to detect and deter this kind of problems as one of the main reasons why this government office is hard hit by corruption scandals. The Addis Ababa City Government Bureau has collected more than 18.4 billion birr during the first 6 months of the Ethiopian current year. The amount of money that the authority has collected and the reasons that I've mentioned before have made this one of the most corruption prone and in need of effective internal audits. In addition to that, I've tried to do a preliminary study before choosing this topic, and the preliminary study that was conducted revealed that many sub-factors have handicapped the internal audit performance, like the lack of properly trained professionals, being that most of the auditors were recruited from the finance department. On top of that, lack of poor internal control that's prone to manipulation, and lack of proper preparation of trainings and seminars to update the knowledge of the auditors have been observed during the preliminary study. When we come to the objective, the general objective of the study is to assess the effectiveness of internal audit in Addis Ababa number 2 medium taxpayers branch office. On the other hand, the specific objective is the first one, to assess the effectiveness of the audit team and ensuring internal control effectiveness in the institution. The second one, to examine the level of independence auditors have from the management and the objectivity of the auditors. The third one is to evaluate how effective the audit team is both in human resource and capacity qualification. The fourth one is to evaluate the effectiveness of internal audit team in ensuring the degree of compliance of the works done by the employees with rules and regulation of the organization. And lastly, it's to evaluate the contribution of the approved internal audit charter that's in place in improving the effectiveness of the internal audit team. When we come to the significance in the scope of the study, the significance of the study is vast, from helping the student researcher and other researchers who are doing the research on similar topics, helping them in the reduction of corruption that's prevalent in the institution and all over the country. When you come to the scope of the study is limited to Addis Ababa number 2 medium taxpayers branch office, but I have also went to the the Addis Ababa Revenue Authority's headquarters, since the internal audit team that's found there performs quarterly evaluation of the internal audit team of the branch. When we come to the methodology, in order to answer the research question stated, I've used both qualitative and quantitative mixed approach in collecting and analyzing the data. In addition to the above, in order to show accurately the characteristic of the particular situation, I have used the descriptive research method, and both primary and secondary data collection methods have also been used. In addition, both qualitative and quantitative data analysis method, because I've collected both qualitative and quantitative data, so I've also used both qualitative and quantitative data analysis methods. The population of the study is the Addis Ababa number 2 branch office, 14 teams. In addition to that, the 5 branch managers and the 11 members that work in the headquarters internal audit team has also been considered in doing this research to limit any sampling error that may occur. Census method has been chosen, so all of the 132 populations have been involved in this research in some way or another. The source of quantitative and quantitative data for this research was both primary and secondary. When we come to the results and conclusion, 132 questionnaires were distributed to 2 label managers, the internal auditors found at the headquarters and the branch offices, and the 30 teams that are audited by the internal audit team. And out of all this, 120 respondents have filled and returned the questionnaire. In addition to the above, in order to get more understanding of the topic, I've also tried to interview the branch headquarters general audit team head, the Addis Ababa number 2 medium taxpayers branch office branch manager, and the internal audit team head. Most of the background data were of heterogeneous, which makes the research more valid. The age bracket, the level of education, the gender, the field of study, the department, and service period were all heterogeneous in the study. When we come to the results, the following major conclusions were found from the basic research question and the major summary findings presented on my paper. So the study revealed that factors that were investigated do have an impact on the effectiveness of the internal audit team. In general, the result of respondents were negative for most of the analyzed elements. The first one is the study revealed to be poor to very poor regarding the degree of the internal audit team effectiveness. In detail, regarding the degree of independence the audit team has from the management influence, the gathered result, except the interview with the branch manager, revealed that to be from poor to very poor, with the branch manager revealed that with the branch manager implying that he doesn't have any influence on the internal audit team, but the results showed otherwise. The result also supported by the interview that was conducted with the branch internal audit team head, the headquarter internal audit team head, both of which stated that there is a certain degree of direct and indirect influence by the management. The second one is concerning the capability of the branch internal audit team, the internal audit staff proficiency and professional care. The related response are seen from the major finding as positive in some factors and negative in the others. To be specific, in general, all of the findings are supported by the interview that was conducted, which revealed that the majority of the internal audit team have professional experience of less than 4 years. In addition to that, all of the team members were bachelor degree holders and didn't have any external accredited certificates. When we come to the third factor that was examined regarding the auditing effectiveness in ensuring the organization employee compliance to internal and applicable external rule and regulation, the majority of the respondents replied that the internal audit performance to be from very poor to poor. The fourth factor that was investigated, which is concerning the internal auditing contribution to ensuring effectiveness and improvement of the internal, the contribution of the improvement of the internal control system, similar to their previous responses, the majority replied that the internal auditing performance is from very poor to poor. In addition to that, the interview that was conducted also confirmed this, and thus all of the parties that were interviewed replied that the internal auditing still lags behind in making sure internal control effectiveness. Lastly, the last point that was examined was regarding the internal audit charter contribution to the team's effectiveness. Even though the majority the majority admitted that after its implementation in 2011, the performance of the internal audit team have improved significantly, but still the other teams in the organization weren't providing enough supporting documents in order for the internal audit team to do its work. Regarding this, I have tried to look at the internal audit charter, and this still had some sections that stated that all of the teams have the responsibility to give the required document to the internal audit team head. So this shows that there is some information gap. When it comes to the recommendation, which is the last part of my presentation, based on the summary of finding presented and the conclusion drawn from it, the following recommendation are forwarded to Addis Ababa Revenue Bureau, Addis Ababa number 2, branch office. I believe that the recommendation will provide feasible solution and the branch and reduce risk exposure. So the first recommendation I forward is, as seen from the conclusion, the composition of the internal audit staff, in addition to lacking experienced personnel, also lacks advanced professional training. So according to internal auditing standard 2008, auditors should comply with the minimum continuing educational requirements and professional standard. So the branch should ensure the internal auditor personnel hiring process has specific standards to help strengthen the team and ensure its implementation. Furthermore, by making continuous assessments. On the other hand, the organization should also prepare inside and outside training opportunities to update the policies, rules, and regulations. In addition, considering how sensitive the organization is, the management, when preparing its annual organization plan, must put into consideration the responsibilities the team has in comparison with the amount of human resource and budget it's allocated to. The second recommendation I forward is, according to the Ministry of Finance, the influence, the level of independence the management has, the level of independence that the internal audit team has a great effect on the reliability of the internal audit report. So the concerned party, the Addis Ababa Revenue Bureau headquarters, should give due concern to this important factor and must come up with ways and procedures to ensure the team's independence, including preparing trainings to those in management level and all of the teams in the organization. The fourth recommendation I forward is, the interview conducted with the internal audit team and the review of the audit done the past 7 years revealed that most of the audit done were of specific types and on specific teams. So when the internal auditor prepares its annual audit plan, it must put into consideration the audit risk, the appropriate audit risk plan, and try to consider and include more audit reports and more teams in its audit report. Lastly, the majority of the response to the questionnaire and the interview revealed that the contribution of the internal audit team to the effectiveness and improvement of internal control and in making sure that the rules and regulations are respected by the employees is from very poor to poor. So the internal audit team should perform effective risk analysis and plan to ensure the effectiveness and improvement of the internal control system. So this is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth, for that presentation. Even though the Zoom room or the technical aspects of the Zoom application was giving you a hard time, you did not give up. And thank you very much for presenting a wonderful speech about your research. Now we will hear from Saron and Sabela. Can we check your voice? Saron and Sabela. Is muted, okay.
Saron and Sabela are currently facing a technical issue, so let's proceed with Itbarak. Then they can proceed after Itbarak's presentation.
Noted. Okay, Itbarak. Please, yeah, mute your mic. Itwara, can you try to speak? Let me check if your microphone is working. Itwara? Okay, Itwara's screen is not moving. I think it's closed, so. Okay, so while we wait for Gitparek to fix, to fix the problem, and okay, now I can see Sabila's screen. But the question is, can we hear you? Saron and Sabila, yeah, can you try to speak? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, while Saron and Sabila are fixing their mic, their research is titled Assessment of the Challenge and Benefits of the Adoption and Implementation of IPSAS in some selected NGOs in Ethiopia. And this research is conducted by Saron Ferdawerk and Sabila Amlaku from St. Mary's University. First, Sabila and Saron, can I hear from you? Again, while we wait for them, you can still share your questions and comments to me or send it to me through the chat room. Don't worry, Sabila, we will fix it. We will not leave this virtual room without hearing your presentation.
Another difficulty. So,
no worries.
Yeah, Itwara is going to present his presentation now. He will share his slide in a moment. Then Saron and Sabila will proceed.
Okay, noted. Itwara, can you please speak? I can see that your screen. Okay, perfect. I can hear you. Now you can start.
Thank you, Betty, for the wonderful introduction. First, I would like to thank the St. Mary's staff for preparing this platform so students can share their acquired knowledge. I am a student of marketing management from St. Mary's University, and my title is an assessment of service recovery strategy in the case of Unity University. To put my title in perspective, I will give a brief definition of 3 terms. First, Philippe Kotler, a well-known figure in the discipline of marketing, defines a service as any act or performance that one party can offer to another that is essentially intangible without the transfer of ownership. And secondly, service failure is the breakdown in the delivery of services. It occurs when the service doesn't meet the customer's expectation. And lastly, service recovery, as defined by Verma, who published numerous publications with service-related topics, defines it as a firm's response to failures in its delivery system. So from preliminary investigation, several points have been identified. The first being repeated occurrence of poor presentation of learning materials in the university occurs repeatedly. This failure is likely to emanate as lack of learning from recovery experience because the problem occurs repeatedly as learned from students. The second point I would like to mention is there is the non-availability of faculty during office hours, and this might lead to not responding to students' requests in a timely manner. And lastly, according to students, rude behavior is common within the university staff members. So from the stated problems, 3 objectives have been driven. The first being to identify the problems that exist in the service recovery practice of Unity University. Secondly, to analyze the effectiveness of the service recovery practice of Unity University. And lastly, to inspect the efforts being made to improve the effectiveness of the recovery practice. So the scope of the study in terms of subject matter is the paper assessed service failure with respect to service recovery strategy, i.e. fixing the customer and fixing the problem. More specifically, with relation to responding quickly, providing appropriate communication, treating customers fairly, cultivating relationship with customers, encouraging and tracking complaints, and learning from recovery experiences. In terms of geographic location, even though the university has 3 campuses located in Addis Ababa, Adama, and Desai, the paper focused on the compound that is located in Addis Ababa, Berji compound. In terms of participants, the participants of this paper are regular students of the compound and the faculty head of business department. The time the paper assessed is from 2019 to 2021 Gregorian calendar. The research design and methodology of this paper. The research for this study was done through the use of conducting the interview and with the use of questionnaire. Interview was conducted through a third party with the business faculty head at the university, and questionnaires were distributed properly at the convenience of the participants. The participants in this study were students from Unity University who undergo different graduating programs and the head of business faculty. The research done for this study used mixed method approach. The sample used in this paper was used based on the recommendations of Burks and Malhotra in their book, Marketing Research. 200 questionnaires were distributed and 191 questionnaires were returned properly filled. The participants involved in this paper included both male and female with various ages and differing durations at the compound. Convenient sampling selection technique was used. Descriptive design was used because the general objective of this paper was to assess the service recovery strategy of Unity University. Quantitative and qualitative data analysis technique were used. Quantitative data analysis technique, specifically descriptive data analysis technique, which includes using charts and figures, and to summarize the findings in percentages. Percentages were used to get the total response of the data collected, and the qualitative data collected through interview is narrated qualitatively. So in relation to respondents' profile, as you can see in the chart, the majority in relation to gender were female respondents in the age group of between 21 to 26, with educational background of third-year students as university students with a duration of 3 years. So the overall mean of the survey data was taken for a brief and concise presentation. So from this data, the following key findings are derived. First, majority of respondents were neutral in relation to responding quickly regarding different service activities of the institution, which implies the respondents don't have a negative or positive feeling towards this action. The next majority out of the whole, encompassing 23.24%, which implies the company is effective in its response actions to student problems. Secondly, concerning providing appropriate communication, majority responded with neutrality, encompassing 30.57%, which denotes a state of confusion or neither a positive or negative response. The next majority agreed, encompassing 27.32%, implying that the institution is doing a good job in its appropriateness when communicating with its students. In relation to treating customers fairly, majority of the students were neutral to this action, but the next majority strongly disagreed, implying there's a problem in the institution's fairness in relation to the service activities directed at the students. And again, majority of the respondents, encompassing 30.90%, responded with neutrality, implying they don't know or they are unsure if the institution encourages and track complaints. The next majority disagreed, which can lead us to conclude that the institution practice in encouraging and tracking complaints needs improvement to improve on its quality. Lastly, majority of respondents disagreed with regards to the institution learning from its recovery experiences. Next majority were neutral to this action, implying non-involvement or unsurety. So from these key findings, the following conclusions were drawn. First, from the overall summary, responding quickly and providing appropriate communication is not good nor bad. Secondly, concerning treating customers fairly, cultivating relationship with customers, encouraging customers' complaints, and learning from recovery experiences. Majority of respondents were neutral, but next majority disagreed, implying poor performance in this strategic area. So the effectiveness of the service recovery strategy of the institution, as we see from the data, it shows that it is not a satisfactory result, considering in all 6 strategies, respondents encompassing the majority were neutral to it. And if the service recovery was effective, it would result in good word of mouth, which would have translated in their response. But respondents were unsure, don't care, or don't know if the institution applies those strategies. So from the key findings and conclusions I have mentioned, the following points are recommended. First, the service recovery strategy of Unity University, located at Gurji, should be implemented well according to a well-designed service recovery program, because research has shown that resolving customer problems effectively has a strong impact on customer satisfaction, loyalty, word-of-mouth communication, and bottom line performance. Second recommendation is Unity University should deal with customers' dissatisfaction through well-organized and designed feedback system to counter-check whether customer satisfaction is assured or not, and should search for points of dissatisfaction and design recovery strategies to address them. Because a well-designed service recovery strategy provides information that can be used to improve service as a part of a continuous improvement effort. Third recommendation, Unity University should create an effective process for dealing with complaints and track complaints to make changes in their policies and procedures to incorporate the identified improvements. It is important to recognize the effects and costs. I put emphasis on these points. It is important to recognize the effects and costs dissatisfied customers impose on our institution. Unity University should encourage and track complaints of customers to identify gaps in its service delivery. Lastly, the management of Unity University should identify an unsatisfied customer on a continuous basis and should give distinguished service recovery to keep them from spreading negative word of mouth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Itbarak, for that wonderful presentation. Excellent job. Now, let's see if we can hear from Sabela in Saron. Okay. Sabela in Saron, please unmute your mic. Perfect. Okay. We can see your screen, but we don't see you. Therefore, if it's convenient for you, I would really appreciate it if you can turn on your camera. While we're on this. Okay, perfect. I can't hear you. Are you speaking, Sabila or Saron? Can anyone hear their voice? Okay. Okay, so my recommendation would be for Sabila. Yeah, Itbarak, thank you. Can you inform Sabila and Saron to use your computer? I mean, they can copy their presentation on your device, then they can present from your computer. Let's do that. Okay. So while we wait for Sabila and Saron to get ready or to start their presentation, I will repeat. Okay, let me repeat the title of their research. Saron Firdawek and Sabila Amlaku's research is titled Assessment of the Challenges and Benefits of the Adoption and Implementation of IPSAS in some selected NGOs in Ethiopia. Therefore, they will present that speech when the problem they're facing is fixed. Okay. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, you can send your questions, comments, or suggestions via chat room, like we've been doing so far. Okay, so until then. Okay. Okay. While they're fixed, let me raise a few questions and we can start when Sabila and Saron are ready. Therefore, okay. So my first question is for Tehetana. Tehetana, are you there? Tehetana, yeah, perfect. Okay. So earlier, you said that, well, as a reminder for those of you who might forget, her speech was focused on the role of employee recruitment and selection on the organization performance. Okay. So, sorry, Saron, okay. Good. Now I think your mic is working, Saron and Sabila. Okay. Certainly, I'm going to mute your mic so that I can check if the voice is coming from their side. I see. Okay, I see. Iman, can you speak through the mic?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can hear you. Okay. Perfect. If the PowerPoint is saved, yeah, I can see Iman sharing the screen. Good job, Iman. Thank you very much for your support. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are finally about to hear the speech or the research that was done by Saron and Sabila. As you can see from the screen, there's research is titled Assessment of Challenges and Benefits of Adoption and Implementation of IPSAS in some selected non-governmental organizations in Ethiopia. Saron and Sabila, finally, I'm about to hear your voice. Take it away.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes, someone? Okay. First of all,
yes.
Thanks. Okay. First of all, thanks for giving me this chance. I'm Saron Ferdawak from Accounting Department. I'm going to present together with Sabila Blaku. So our research title is the assessment of challenges and benefits of adopting and implementation of IPSAS in some selected NGOs found in Ethiopia. First, let us see what IPSAS means. IPSAS is International Public Sector Accounting Standard that is issued by IPSAS, or International Public Sector Standard Board. It is issued with the aim of improving overall financial reporting to have a common understanding over all the world. And also it's for public sectors, including NGOs. Our research focused on NGOs. So NGOs are working internal funded grants, while private and international organizations are taking a global approach to their work. As a result, NGOs face a variety of international funding schemes complicated by lack of financial planning and reporting approach. And also, stakeholders require financial statements to be accountable and transparent, but the cash base of accounting system previously adopted by public sector doesn't show the actual balance sheet and performance of the companies. And also, most developing countries use cash base of accounting system. That is hard, even impossible, to compare within the same organization. So the adoption and implementation of IPSAS provide solution to ensure consistency and comparability. Ethiopian NGOs with a wide range of stakeholders, such as state funders and UN funders, are not used to being consistent, transparent, and accountable for transparent. For this reason, adopting and implementing of IPSAS is a must thing. So what intended us to do this research is it's the time for NGOs for transition from the accounting system they used to operate to the one that's being recommended and proclaimed IPSAS. In addition, there are only a few studies done about this topic, and most of them are on the first time adoption of IPSAS. But what we aim to focus is more on the challenges that are being faced and also benefits that are being enjoyed during the adoption and also through the process of transition and implementation of IPSAS. Therefore, this study aims to examine the application of IPSAS, challenges and opportunities based on accountability, transparency, and educational responsibility. The other one is our specific objective. Our specific objective is focused on the first three are focused on the benefits of IPSAS, and the last one is on the challenges of IPSAS. The first is to determine whether the adoption of IPSAS increase accountability in the selected NGOs. And the second one is to determine whether the adoption of IPSAS improve transparency in NGOs. The third one is to assess whether the adoption of IPSAS increase the desired educational and professional responsibilities in NGOs. So our research in to increase the level of perception and professionalism in improving their compliance to donor requirement, and also increase funds from donors, including foreign donors, by increasing accountability and transparency. And the other one is the last specific objective is to examine the major challenges that hinder the process of adoption and implementation of IPSAS. So the scope of this research is delimited to assess professionals' view towards challenges faced in the benefits enjoyed in the implementation of IPSAS in some NGOs, and the study focused on 5 NGOs that have fully implemented IPSAS. The NGOs that are not fully implemented IPSAS are excluded from our scope, and these NGOs are Well in Action, Action Against Hunger, Goal, JSI, and Christianity. So the other part will be presented by Sabila. Thank you.
Okay. Hello everyone, I'm Sabila Mlaku. I'm also from the Faculty of Accounting and Finance, and I'm very sorry for the inconvenience that we have created. And I'll pick it up from where my friend have stopped. which is I'm going to talk some things about the design and the methodology of the study. As per our research approach, we used a mixed research approach, which means we used both qualitative and quantitative types of information. I hope we all understand the definition and the difference between qualitative and quantitative source of the data. So as per our qualitative data, we used unstructured interview questions and financial statements of some companies, some NGOs that we have selected. And for our quantitative source of our data, we used a closed-ended questionnaire. And our research design, for our research design, we used a descriptive research design because the purpose of the study is to assess the major challenges and the major benefits of the process of adoption and implementation of IPSAS. So as we do not have factors that we should relate and we should reason out, we chose this a descriptive design of research. And our population, as mentioned earlier, are the NGOs that have adopted and implemented IPSAS according to the information we obtained from Agency for Civic Organizations of Ethiopia, which is referred to as AXO. And from these NGOs, we have used a convenient sampling to select the 5 NGOs which are mentioned before. We used a convenient sampling to select these NGOs, which were operative enough to help us and to work with us. And we have done a census to reach out to the finance and accounting staff members, which are 51 in number. And as per our source of our information, we used both primary and secondary source of our data. And we collected our primary source of data using closing questionnaires and unstructured interview with some professionals. And our secondary source of data were collected through financial statements and other related papers of the respective NGOs. And we analyzed this collected information using a descriptive statistics, which means we used both standard deviation and mean. And the interview proportion was analyzed through a content analysis, and we presented this data using tables and graphs. So when I come to the data analysis, the demographic information is presented as follows. The female and the male proportion are almost equal, which inclines to the female respondents a little bit, which is 51.2% of our respondents were females and 48.88% was males. And the level of management, almost 47% of the respondents were at the top level managers, and almost half of the respondents were middle level and lower level managers. When we come to the position of the respondents in the company, the majority of the respondents were the finance heads and the department heads, and some were external auditors, internal auditors, and other accounting staff members. And majority of the respondents have experience of more than 11 years, and some have almost more than 15 years of experience, as we can see on the chart. And as per their educational level, 36.6% of the respondents have a master's degree, and some 56% have a master's degree, and 36.6% have a BA degree, which means we can rely on the responses. So when we come to our objective related questions, for the questions related to the accountability, for the question we asked about if IPSAS increases the accountability of the financial reports of the NGOs, almost the majority of the responses have agreed that IPSAS really increases the accountability of the financial statements of the NGOs, because IPSAS requires the financial statements to have a disclosure part. So as the disclosure section is really increased, the accountability of the financial statements produced by these NGOs will be increased as well. So the users will rely on the financial statements produced by the respective NGOs. And for the questions related to the transparency of the NGOs, again here, majority of the respondents have agreed that adopting and implementing IPSAS have increased the transparency of the NGOs, because it helps them to produce informations which are timely, accurate, and relevant. So it increases the transparency of the financial statements that they provide to the external users. And as for the objective, IPSAS increases the educational and professional responsibility of the companies. Majority of the respondents have agreed that the majority of accountants and auditors have difficulty in understanding IPSAS, as it is implied that it's a bit complicated, and the responsible organizations like the Accounting and Auditing Board of Ethiopia, AXO, universities, NGOs, and other professional associations should coordinate to transmit the knowledge which is required to facilitate the implementation of IPSAS. And again, majority of the respondents have agreed that academic and professional training has been an issue that hinder the process of adoption and implementation of IPSAS. And the challenges mentioned by the respondents have been summarized as follows in the summary section. So as a summary, we have distributed about 51 questionnaires to the expected respondents of their respective NGOs, of which 42 have been completely filled out and collected. We have also had an unstructured interview with professionals, like with the external auditor and the finance head of one NGO. And we have also analyzed audited financial reports and statements prepared as per the previously used standard, which is ZGAP, and which is now in one from produced by using IPSAS of one NGO. And majority of the respondents, as mentioned earlier, have agreed that IPSAS improves both accountability and transparency of the financial statements of NGOs. And majority of the respondents again have agreed that those who are responsible to transmit the knowledge and to facilitate the training which is required to facilitate the process of implementation and adoption of IPSAS are mentioned to be the universities, Accounting and Auditing Board of Ethiopia, which is commonly referred to as ABE, and the Agency for Civic Societies in Ethiopia, which is commonly referred to as AXO, and other professional associations are the responsible organizations mentioned to be responsible for the facilitation of the process of adoption and implementation of Ethiopia. And some of the challenges mentioned by the respondents include the difficulty in asset recognition, measurement, and the evaluation. And it has also been mentioned that there has been a lack of specific training material on the adoption of the employees in the concerned professionals can understand IPSAS fully and can ease out the implementation process. And there's also been shortage of qualified accountants, and it has also been reported that the adoption and implementation of IPSAS, it requires a high amount of cost, and there hasn't been a coordination and communication among the responsible organizations, which are mentioned earlier. So based on the findings that I have just mentioned, our recommendations include the following main points: the process of adoption and implementation of IPSAS, and the responsible organizations mentioned earlier should work together with training institutions to develop the training required for the IPSAS implementation. And Accounting and Auditing Board of Ethiopia should be revised according to IPSAS, and the management teams in the NGOs should also have the appropriate awareness of the
Yeah, there was an internet connection interruption. Therefore, yeah. Sabila, you were telling us, you were describing a recommendation. Therefore, please share your screen and you can continue from where you stopped.
So I believe I have stopped on the.
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay. So as per our recommendation, we suggest that the government should take a great role in providing the appropriate training for the concerned professionals so that the process of adoption and implementation of IPSAS can be easy. And the responsible organizations like the ABE, AXO, NGOs, universities, and other professional associations should also work with the training institutions to develop intensive IPSAS capacity building programs, and the training programs can reach out the concerned professionals. And ABE should also work with the Ministry of Education so that the curriculum of the universities can be revised according to IPSAS. And the management teams in NGOs have to get the awareness about the proclamation of IPSAS, and they should invest in IPSAS because it has been reported that it benefits them. So further studies can be made on those public sectors other than NGOs, because our NGOs, our research is based. Our research focused on NGOs, not other public sectors. So other further studies can be made on other public sectors which have already started implementing and adopting IPSAS, and other factors that have a direct impact on the implementation process and their relations can also be undertaken by further studies. This is all. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Saron and Sabila. Yeah, because I could not find an English translation that can equate the challenge we had this morning. But the good news is, not give up. You delivered a wonderful presentation, and for that, we thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, now for the second half, we heard 4 amazing presentations from Tesina, which was about the role of employee recruitment and selection on the organization performance. The second presentation was from Ruth, and it focused on the effectiveness of internal audit in the public sector. And the third speech was presented by Yitparek, assessment on service recovery strategy. And the third, our last presenters, definitely not the least presenters, were Saron and Sabila, and their research focused on the challenges and benefits of IPSAS in selected NGOs in Ethiopia. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, you can raise your hand. You can raise your hand, your actual hand or virtual hand, or you can send it to me directly or put it in the chat box for everyone to see. Therefore, until we receive questions from our participants, let me be the first one to ask. And Saron and Sabila, you are on the hot seat. I mean, you've been moving around. Therefore, I will start from you. Well, wonderful presentation. First, I would like to congratulate you on that. Therefore, my question is, your research focuses on implementing, or it focuses on the challenge and the benefits or the opportunities that, if anyone is using, I don't see any mic turned on. Okay, let me proceed. But there is an echo, and if you can help us, please unmute your mic. Thank you in advance. Therefore, your research focuses on the challenges and benefits of IPSAS in selected NGOs in Ethiopia. Well, I did not know what it was. Therefore, first, thank you very much for that introduction. Your presentation was very explanatory. But my question is, what makes this tool different than other tools? For instance, there are so many performance improving tools. Therefore, what makes this particular tool different than the other tools? And does this tool, IPSAS, can only be implemented in NGOs? And my other question is, did you consider other NGOs, when you were conducting your research? I think your research is descriptive, if I'm not mistaken. Therefore, did you get a chance or the opportunity to see what the implementation process looks like in other NGOs? Over to you, Saron and Sarilla.
Okay, thank you. IPSAS, it is.
I can hear you. You may proceed.
Okay. First, IPSAS, it is.
Are you hearing us?
Are you hearing?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. First, IPSAS is standard. It is an internationally accepted standard. As I mentioned before, it is issued by IPSAS, International Public Sector Accounting Standard Board. So it is standard to improving overall financial reporting for public sectors to be their financial reports to be acceptable for fundraisers around the world.
So to add to what she said, as we all know, as the accounting and finance students know, at least there is a disclosure section of financial statements preparation, which hasn't been given enough attention, and by using the previous standard, but IPSAS has given much more attention to the disclosure section of financial statements. So as a disclosure section has been given enough attention, the accountability and the transparency of the financial statements produced by this NGOs will be significantly increased, so that the external users, the donors, and the fundraisers can rely on the statements produced by these NGOs. So the major benefits of adopting and implementing IPSAS is to increase the disclosure section of the financial statements, so that it can be more transparent and accountable to external users. So for the second question, it's not only the NGOs that have been obliged to use IPSAS, to implement IPSAS. There are also other public sectors which are NFP, or which are for-profit organizations, or which are not business sectors. So it's not only NGOs that have been obliged to implement IPSAS, but the duration that they are obliged to submit their audited financial statements by using IPSAS has been postponed to 2016 EC. So the NGOs have not been committed to adopt and implement IPSAS fully. So we have only managed to find 5 NGOs that had the commitment to adopt and implement IPSAS. So we just assess the 5 NGOs challenges and benefits. We haven't had the access to other NGOs challenges.
Okay, well, thank you. But I have a follow-up. Thank you very much for your response. I mean, which one of you is Saron and which one of you is Sabila?
I'm Saron and she's Sabila.
Okay. Good to know. Okay, so I have a follow-up question. If you did not get a chance to see how the other NGOs are performing, on your recommendation, you say that the stakeholders, such as the universities or other NGOs, should share their knowledge. Therefore, how can you be sure that the other NGOs are performing better than the one that you analyzed or that you examined on your research?
According to the information we obtained from AXO, the only NGOs that have reported their financial statements to AXO have been around 7 yet. So the other two NGOs are only in the process of adoption. They didn't fully adapt and implement IPSAS. So this is what we can get from AXO. So that's why we concluded that.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, you did. You did answer my questions very well and excellent job. Thank you very much. Okay, now my question will go to Itbarak. Itbarak, are you there? Okay, Itbarak's screen is frozen. Therefore, I will go to Tehetinna, then I will get back to you, Itbarak. Tehetinna. Yeah. Okay. So, well, actually, I was about to ask you a question earlier, and I would this time I hope to complete my question to you. Therefore, my question for you is, well, you said that organizations should conduct preliminary interview before performing the actual interview, so that it can help them to screen out those candidates or those applicants who are not, who may not be competent enough to fit the job description. But my question is, I mean, after all, they are going to do the interview, and don't you think that doing another interview prior to the actual interview will only waste time, will only waste energy, will only waste money? And if your answer is no, why? Over to you, Tehetinna.
Thank you. First of all, in the human resource planning, on the human resource preliminary interview is there. But my title is Recruitment and Selection Practice on Organization Performance. So in order to have a good performance, or in order to be competent, the organization must have a good human power. So in order to have a good human power, there must be a good evaluation process, a good recruiting process. So in order to have that, for example, if we have 100 pool of applicants, and if we only need 2, so first we'll apply a preliminary interview. For example, if the job required to have a 2-year or 3-year work experience. So if some people with 0-year experience came and applied, we can reduce the number of applicants or the number of application by just simply seeing things and by simply asking them simple questions, and then they can proceed with the interview. So in order to have a good human power, there must be a good interview. So we have to decrease the number of applicants.
Therefore, your recommendation is still to go with the preliminary interview, so that it will make the other people who are interviewing or who are performing the interview job easier. Okay, thank you very much, Tehetinna, for that answer. Now let's go to Ruth. Ruth, are you there? Ruth? Okay, why do we wait for Ruth to get back to us? Itbarak. Ruth and Itbarak. Okay, Itbarak, I can see you there. Yeah, you're raising your hand. Okay. Well, the internet connection is having a field day. Therefore, first, let me check if your mic works. Can you say something, Itbarak?
Yes, Ruth is here with
Oh, good. I can hear you clearly. Good. Okay, so your research focused on the assessment of service recovery strategy. First, I mean, this is my first time hearing about service recovery strategy. Therefore, I would really appreciate it if you can tell us what service recovery strategies for people like me who has no idea what it means. On the other hand, you mentioned that, or you said that responding quickly is neither good nor bad. Well, so when should we respond to customers? When do you think is the appropriate time or the right time to respond to customers? Over to you.
Okay. First, service recovery strategy. As I mentioned in my brief introduction, service recovery strategy is not responding to students' problem accurately in an effective manner, and because service failure has occurred. We have
Tarek, you are breaking up. Okay, Tarek, you are breaking up. Therefore, my recommendation would be for you to go to Tehetanna.
Tehetanna?
Yeah.
Tehetanna?
Her voice was clear when she responded earlier. You are breaking up. Okay. Thank you very much, Tehetanna, for fixing. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tehetanna's mic is muted.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, now I can hear you clearly. Please continue.
Did I answer the first question? What service recovery is all about?
Yeah, yes, please do.
So in the conclusion part, when I said that responding quickly is neither good nor bad, I was implying from the data that I collected, because majority of the students were neutral to the response. I said the university's response to students were neither good nor bad.
Oh, okay. On to the second question. Or okay, and on to the first question, can you tell us what service recovery strategy means? You started explaining and we lost you.
Okay.
At some point.
So service recovery strategy is a firm's response to the failure that occurred in the institution. Meaning, for example, if one department is not responding to students' problems quickly and effectively, then we say service failure occurs. So if the service failure occurs, we have to follow that with service recovery strategies recommended by different figures in the discipline of service marketing. Like responding quickly, cultivating relationship with customers, encouraging and tracking complaints, fix the service failure problems. That is a brief definition of service recovery strategy.
Thank you very much, Itbarak, and thank you for taking the time to explain what service recovery strategy means, and excellent job. Therefore, my final question goes to Ruth. Ruth. Ruth Chani, yeah. Oh, let me under.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. Yes.
Hello, Bethlehem, is it audible?
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Betty.
I was talking to myself. My mic was muted. My sincere apologies. Okay, so Ruth, your research focused on the effectiveness of internal audits in the public sector, particularly. Therefore, what surprised me the most, I mean, maybe it's not a surprise, but on your presentation, you say that there is a direct influence from the management, and the influence did not result in a positive way, or did not affect the process of auditing in a positive way. Therefore, again, you also say that there is an information gap. Therefore, as a researcher, I mean, how can we solve this problem? I mean, if the manager, if the man in power, if the lady in power is affecting the way these people are doing their job, is it possible for us to fully get the results?
Yeah, in a way, as a researcher, we're kind of like, we can't do much, but when I did my literature review, there was little to none done on the effectiveness of internal audits, not alone on the public sector. So pumping this information out to the public and letting them know that there are problems and that need to be solved, and these problems are really affecting the economy of the country. This, just by providing the information, will help immensely in improving the situation. Since the first step in finding a solution is knowing the problem. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, after you identify the problem, the next step would be to find a solution. And I feel like you did find a solution, at least the first step towards improving their performance, or at least delivering an accurate report that was audited properly. But if we don't have the information, what can we do? How can we go about it?
I'm sorry, can you explain your question?
Okay, for instance, you say that there is an information gap.
Yeah.
There is an information gap. And if we don't have an accurate information, I mean, as a researcher, what do you think we should do to get better results, or to get accurate reports on auditing?
Okay, so I say there's an information gap because there's an internal audit charter that's adopted by the organization, but most of the teams didn't have a clue about it. Even like there were some employees who didn't know it existed. So educating, it's the responsibility of the organization to prepare seminars, trainings in order to educate each employee on that topic and the audit charter. And first of all, I think I didn't mention it on my presentation, but first agreeing on the audit charter, making sure that every employee understands it and accepts it. That's like the first step. That should be the first step. And after that, giving them trainings that would help in bridging the gap.
Well, thank you very much. That was indeed an excellent response. And thank you for your presentation, and thank you for meticulously answering the question. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, now the time has come for us to adjourn this meeting. And for that, okay, well, I hope all of you enjoyed today's session. I, for myself, learned a lot. I enjoyed each and every one of his presentation. And I don't know how you guys did it, but your time usage was impeccable. Everyone was in time. And yeah, I mean, even with the technical glitch, we are still in time. It's 12:27. Can you believe that? Therefore, I want to congratulate all of you. I want all of you to give yourself a round of applause, because you obviously did an excellent job. Therefore, congratulations on the presentation. Congratulations on the graduation. Now, without further ado, I would give the floor to the Director for the Research and Knowledge Management Office at St. Mary's University, Ms. Sanait Ginahun. Sanait, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bijile. And thank you all the presenters. They provide a very impressive presentation. And I personally, it gives me a very great pleasure to make this concluding remark on behalf of the Research and Knowledge Management Office. Every year, our office RACMO organizes different national and international research events. The Student Research Forum is one of the research events we have been organizing since 2007. The forum is exclusively organized for undergraduate students to share their research findings and insights with fellow students and other researchers in a traditional research conference format. Doing so gives the students a more professional and academic dialogue experience, which I believe will help them in their future educational and career endeavors. In the previous years, the forum welcomes presenters from all institutions of higher learning in Ethiopia and from all corners of the academic curriculum. However, due to the pandemic and the current state of our country, this year's forum, like the previous year, hosts students from St. Mary's University alone. St. Mary's University, through this annual forum, aims to contribute for the improvement of the state of undergraduate education and also create a unique environment for the recognition and celebration of students who are able to conduct exemplary research in their respective field of study. Ladies and gentlemen, in the half-day forum, we witnessed excellent presentation despite the hiccup and this challenge, technical challenge we were facing. The presentation ranged from exploring organizational culture to the role of employees recruitment and selection process in organizational performance, from service quality to service recovery strategies, from internal audit system to the adoption of IPSAS, from the development of online registration system to keeping historical buildings and monuments safe here in Addis Ababa. I personally find all the presentation interesting and informative. Moreover, the good manners revealed by the presenters show that they have put great efforts in advance. And for that, I would like to thank and pay my deep respect to all the presenters for their fruitful participation in the forum. Finally, I would like to thank all who contributed for the realization of this event. This includes all department heads at Chabale campus who selected these students and forward them to us, the Master of Ceremony, the ICT Development and Support Unit, the International Relations and Communication Office, and the participant for attending and contributing to the discussions. We are truly grateful for all of you and for your valuable contribution. Thank you very much. With this, I declare the forum closed. Thank you.